Hello, everyone. Welcome to Small Talk with the Etsy Collective. We're so happy to be back with the season two of the collective. We have really missed having these sessions on every Saturday and seeing you, but we're so glad to be back with more sessions around crafts, creativity, and community. I'm Radhika Agrawal, part of the PR and marketing team of Etsy in India. On behalf of everyone from the team, I would like to thank you for supporting the season one of Small Talk with the Etsy Collective. Your love and enthusiasm is what keeps us going. This year, we aim to bring more inspirational speakers, thought leaders, and some phenomenal conversations around crafts, creativity, and community, along with our in house team of Etsy experts who will guide you through opening and setting up your Etsy shop. What better occasion to start off the season 2 of Small Talk with a Women's Day special? On that note, I would like to welcome and introduce our special guest for today, Sujata Sarwan, CEO and founder of Little Black Book, commonly known as LBB. A little about Suchita that she has graduated from Delhi University with a degree of economics, after which she's worked with Wizcraft and the BBC. Her forte and domain interest lies in marketing, social media, brand marketing, and sales. She started Little Black Book as a platform for young and urban audiences to access the best local discoveries across categories. She's been featured on the Forbes India 30 under 30 list, Forbes Asia 30 under 30 list, and has been a guest speaker at India Conference, Harvard University. I warmly welcome you, Sachita, and thank you so much for being part of the Small Talk session, which is about building a small business.
Super being here. Thanks so much for having me.
And now I'd like to pass it on to Sunanda. Sunanda Krishna is the PR and marketing lead for Etsy in India and will be moderating this session. Over to you, Sunanda.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Radhika. We're so excited to have season two of Small Talk with the Etsy Collective, and I'm very happy that we could start with you, Suchita. So we all know LBB, and I have been personally following it since it was more of a discovery um, platform. So we have a lot of questions for you. But before we get into that, I just want to remind the audience that in case they have any questions, then please feel free to type them in the chat box and we'll take them in the second half of the session when we're done with the Q&A. So now let's start, Suchita. And my first question to you is that, as she mentioned, you worked with BBC and Bizcraft. So then how did LBB happen? And did you always think or know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur as well?
Thanks so much for having me, Sunanda. It's a pleasure being here, and I think for me, it's great chatting with you guys because I think Etsy and LVB have such a common, mission, especially with respect to powering emerging brands and businesses. So it's a pleasure being here. So for me, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I am almost certain I didn't necessarily know what an entrepreneur, that entrepreneurship as a profession was even, an option. I think for me, a lot of my journey with LBB has been purely out of, the joy of doing two things. One is discovering small businesses, small and mid-sized businesses. I've always been curious, so I've always enjoyed, walking down different streets, spending time on social media platforms to see what's interesting, what's new, and what's exciting that's coming up across, multiple different lifestyle categories. And I think the second thing is I love learning, right? And for me, that really is what LVB has been, which is just a phenomenal experience, that no amount of money or time can buy when it comes to just accelerating your learning curve. So, yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot that went into starting LVB, but it was essentially those two things, which was just a curiosity. And an interest in emerging brands and businesses across lifestyle categories and wanting to learn more.
Right. And what were like some of the, biggest challenges or hurdles that you faced?
So, see, I don't think my hurdles are any different to any entrepreneur, right? I think a lot of the hurdles are more understanding what it takes to build a business. I think there's a big difference in between, following your passion and actually making a business out of it, right? And I think, the challenges that I faced was predominantly related to how to think about building a business. So, for example, there are a lot of terms that, I sort of like learned along the way, a lot of ways to think about, business building, whether it comes to what your proposition is, what your positioning is, who your target addressable market is, how large is your TAM, how do you pitch to an investor, how do you raise capital, all of those things that, perhaps an average MBA kid is taught. I mean, I don't have an MBA, and econ doesn't really teach you any of this, right? So a lot of it was, what I had to sort of learn on the job. And as much as I thoroughly love my experience at the BBC and at Wizcraft, but, I never really managed a team before. So, and there's a lot that goes into building an organization, right? Today we're a team of about 120. So in a nutshell, I think the challenges were more along the general lines of how do you take something that you truly believe is a massive opportunity, but actually make a business out of it that can, deliver returns on not just your investors and your customers and your merchants' time and effort, but even your own time and effort. Those would be, in a nutshell, the challenges that I potentially have faced.
And do you have any sort of memories from, like, I know you moved your office to a new space, but from like the first office that you had, and how did you sort of set that up, or probably the first team member that you hired?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I have this running joke, right? Which is when I quit my job at the BBC to work on LBB full time, I had like savings of 60,000-70,000 rupees, which I sort of taken to invest in a nice, very small, like our first office was literally as big as this room, right? Where like a bunch of interns and 2-3 colleagues of mine who I could afford to pay, all of us sort of worked out of there. And it was absolutely, I mean, it's a funny story, but I didn't, I never set up an office before, and I didn't know how much things cost. So I have this joke that I tell my team, which is, LBB was set up on a investment of 60,000-70,000 bucks, off of which 30,000 rupees was spent on wall paint. Because the office was in such a shitty state, so we had to repaint all the walls. But obviously, I had no clue what half this shit cost. So you live and you learn. Obviously, started out not knowing the basics, but I am happy to report that I know how much wall paint costs now.
That's great. And also, as you said, like, you don't have an MBA, but it's that typical startup. It's part of probably the definition that there is an MBA always. So, I mean, your example that you don't need an MBA, but did you feel that, oh, I should have done this as well?
So actually, not at all. I do think the thing that you need, which just accelerates your ability to learn. See, because behind every successful entrepreneur, and I'm not saying I'm successful, but anyone who I've met who's built, really fantastic, large scale, multiple hundreds of and billions of dollars whether it's in terms of valuation or monetization. The one key factor across all of them is they just have this insane ability to absorb and learn, and access great people, right? And I think when you're building a company, that's what you need. You need to have access to phenomenal talent, and the talent needn't necessarily be talent who you employ. It could even be talent who you bring on board as mentors and advisors. It could even be talent, who you use to just brainstorm with, in an official or unofficial capacity. So I think more than a fancy degree or any of that. In fact, there is data that shows that an average successful entrepreneur doesn't have high flying degrees from the fanciest colleges that are out there, right? But what really makes an entrepreneur successful is their ability to access and tap into the best minds that are out there. And I do think, irrespective of what kind of entrepreneur you want to be. So, for example, I sort of fall into the bucket of technology, right? Because essentially LBB is a web and an app first platform. But for instance, if you're in the field of fashion, or if you're in the field of, home and decor or beauty and personal care, a lot of what you want to think of is, okay, who are the best people in my space? And how do I get 1 hour with them and ask them all the possible questions that I need to ask them in order to build my business better, right? So I think the key really is in creating that network for yourself, and ensuring that you're tapping into that network as often as is possible.
Right, right. And so I think LVB is more like a community. That's what I feel. So how did this happen? And if you could speak a little bit about the importance of having this sort of a community for a business to grow.
No, absolutely. There's this a really interesting presentation that was made by Benedict Evans that I recommend everyone check out. I think it was from 2018 or 2019, where he basically spoke about the future of e-commerce, right? And he said that e-com 1.0, so to speak, facilitated buying as a behavior, but e-com 2.0 will facilitate shopping as a behavior, right? So, and for all the listeners out there, the difference in between the two is you buy detergent, right? You buy a patila, right? But you shop for earrings, you shop for cola puris, you shop for a shirt. There's a difference, there's a big difference in between the two. And the biggest difference is when you're buying, the indices that you sort of like, optimize for is price, right? So usually in buying based behaviors or commodity first products, the customer tends to be very price sensitive, right? The customer also wants convenience and access, which is why even to date most of buying led behavior is still happening offline and not online, just because of price, convenience, access. And if you look at your traditional sort of marketplaces, whether it's the Amazons or the Flipkarts of the world, a lot of what they've been able to do an excellent job of is their moat is logistics, right? Their moat is the fact that they can ship out products faster, better, quicker than ever before. On the other hand, when you look at shopping as a customer behavior, shopping is what customers do based on taste preferences, based on points of inspiration. So you shop basis the 20 handles that you may follow on Instagram. You shop basis watching a really funny show on Netflix and really liking what the girl in the show was wearing. And really what creates shopping is as I said, taste preferences, recommendations, and that's actually where community plays a big role. And I think for a product like ours, and especially the industry that we're in, which is very competitive, you can't really compete with an Amazon because your logistics will never be as good as theirs, right? So why fight a losing battle? And I think for us, therefore, ensuring that we have a really strong community where our moat is the supply that this community is able to bring to the table, right? The information, the reviews, the content that this community is able to create for us. And also, more importantly, I think the biggest use case of a community is they keep reminding you why you actually do what you do. And I think, in business, it's very easy to get distracted by the next shiny object. But I think, your core community will always keep pulling you back to, no, man, this is why I actually come to you. Give me more of that, right? And your community will keep showing you the mirror. So yeah, I think for us, the use case of community was, we knew from day one that price, access, and convenience may not necessarily be a moat for LBB, or even the use case of the customer coming onto our platform. But if we truly want to build a scalable and defensible business, we would have to lean on, building a community, energizing and invigorating that community, and really exercising their ability to give us feedback and inputs and make our product better.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, agree. And also, like, it's come in the audience also, and people have asked it, why did you call it the Little Black Book? Like, what was the inspiration for this name behind
Uh,
it?
Absolutely. So Little Black Book, colloquially has always meant like a book of secrets, right? Or like the book in which you put things that you really care about or the things that you think are awesome. And that's really, in a nutshell, what LBB is, right? It's the place where you come when you're looking for awesome, right? When you're looking for things that are truly different. It's not the everything store, right? So it's not anything and everything that you'll find on LBB, but it truly is things that are special, things that you want to remember and you want to keep a note of. So that's where the decision to choose Little Black Book came from. It also had this like fun, almost like secrety sort of element to it, which really helped us in our earlier few years, in, again, same thing, getting our community together, getting like-minded people to use our webinar app and become our shoppers subsequently.
And I also remember the hashtag that I don't know if you still use it, but it was like hashtag I found awesome.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We still use that, and we also now use something different. So yeah, no, and that's the thing, right? Like awesome is a feeling, and that's a lot of and the feeling that delight, right? That customer surprise of stumbling upon something that you didn't even know was an option for you. That's a lot of what a Little Black Book taps into.
Yeah, that's actually great. But Suchita, you've helped a lot of small brands. But for any person, a small brand like or a one-person shop that's trying to grow, so what would your advice to them be? Like, how should they start?
So, I think so. Two things to remember is, small businesses and brands are the backbone of at least our economy, right? They're the single largest job creators. They are actually the single most interesting and innovative way to actually create some amount of independence, right? I know one of the contexts for today's conversation is also Women's Day, right? And what's critical is for women to figure out ways in which they can be financially independent, and I think that's a lot of what small businesses and small brands provide for. So I think the first thing to remember is that you are the backbone of everything from employment to category creation to product creation in this country, and you really need to leverage that, right? You need to use your small as your biggest strength, as opposed to coming from a place of weakness. So I think I mean, I don't really believe in giving advice, but I'll give a pep talk of sorts. So one is like, really know that you're the backbone of this country's growth and economy. I think the second thing that I'd say is, and these are just mistakes that we made in our earlier years, is really take out time, even if you have no desire to build a large business, it doesn't matter. But what I'd urge all small businesses to do, because LBB also started out as a small business, right? As did a platform like Etsy. We all start small. But I think the key thing to do on your first day is really think through the constructs of how you want your business to grow, right? So really sit down, do that exercise with yourself where you think about, what is my customer proposition? Who is my user, right? Where do they live? I think old school marketing tactics and techniques over index on demographics, but actually it's super important to also define psychographics of your user, right? So what do they wear? What is their name? Do they stay with their parents? Do they stay in a rented house, right? Or do they own their own home? So really almost create a persona for who your ideal customer is, and then work backwards to say, okay, what is a thing that's missing in this person's life that my business or that my brand can, add value as far as, this person's concerned. And again, the way you can add value is, either give a person a product that is a better quality than what's currently available in the market, give a person a product that's cheaper than what's available in the market, or better design than what's available in the market. So there are many ways in which you can almost dissect how to differentiate your brand and your product. But what I would urge all small businesses to do, which I wish I had done in year 1 to 2 of LBB, is just rethink through your user, think through where they are, what they do, where they stay, because that will help you, irrespective of how big or small your business grows or goes to. It'll help you at least charter your like path exponentially better, and also spend your time, investment, and marketing dollars really well. So think big, but just make sure that you get your fundamentals down on day one.
Okay, that's actually so a lot of, in fact, more than 80% of sellers on Etsy are women, and majority of them are actually home based. So that's like great advice for them. And which actually brings me to my next question: that for such small businesses, how important would digital marketing or understanding a little bit of the digital sphere be? And I also remember in one of your interviews, you've said that everyone is an influencer and everything is influenced. So if you could just maybe elaborate a little bit on this.
Absolutely, and I think that really is the magic of where the internet is headed, right? And even I, personally and even work-wise, we're very bullish on the creator economy, because today everyone has the opportunity to be a creator, right? So, for example, what you're doing right now is you're technically a creator, because you're creating content which is going up on Facebook, going up on Instagram, etc., etc. And obviously, you're engaging with so many awesome awesome, brands and merchants through this exercise, right? And I think, when I had written that article about my take on influencer marketing, a lot of where I was coming from is, especially if you're a small brand, right? A lot of customer trust actually comes from you. So if you can convince the user that they should trust you as a seller, right? So hypothetically speaking, if I was selling this mug, on LBB or Etsy, obviously your product is super important, but at the end of the day, the customer also needs to believe who you are, and that you actually care about solving the customer's needs. And I think that's where, really thinking of the fact that the power of influence doesn't only lie with an influencer who has 20 million followers, or platforms like Etsy and LBB who may have millions and millions of users and customers, but actually the power lies with you yourself, right? And I think this is really important because some of the best brands that I've seen come out of India are the ones where the founders are at the forefront of explaining exactly what their brand does, right? And they just do a stellar job of it, right? You'll see it on their About Us section on their website. You'll see it on their Instagram. You'll see it on their Facebook. So I think as far as digital goes, in my opinion, it is the best and most fastest, quickest way to do two things. One, test out if your product even is worth existing. So what is your minimum viable product? Digital is the best way to go about it. The second is just the amount of distribution that you can get is unparalleled. And I think the third and the beauty of digital is you don't need too many people. You can actually do things yourself if you're committed to making a go of what your brand has to offer.
Yeah, actually, that's great advice, Suchita. Coming to my other question is that, you obviously inspire a lot of people and women also, but who are the people who inspire you? Like who, if you could tell us a little bit about, mentors in your life or people you are inspired by.
That's a great question, and I don't mean to sound cheesy, but actually, in between my teammates, my customers, and our merchants, right? It's just such a delight, working with the colleagues that I have. Even though I'm sure I'm a pain in the ass half the time, but on most days, it's just so lovely working with the team that I have, and we've actually a lot of them have been with LBB from for like 5, 6, 7 odd years. So it's just truly a delight working with my colleagues, and obviously my customers inspire me because that they're willing to take a punt on a brand that they've never heard of before through LBB is just amazing. And our merchant community as well, right? Because everyone's just building such fantastic, phenomenal things. I think to specifically give a shout out to a few people who I think have built truly remarkable brands and businesses, or are just like remarkable folks who at least I've learned from. I think one is Irina Vittel. She is just absolutely phenomenal. She was I think she was a partner at McKinsey or director at McKinsey. She was there for about 15 years, and now she's an independent consultant. I have been fortunate enough to talk to her a couple of times, and she is just the single best provider of like very direct feedback advice. Mona Gandhi, again, someone who I spoke to a lot in our earlier years, and she was a guiding light. She was the first female engineer at Airbnb, worked there for a significant amount of time. Devjani Ghosh, I think Falguni Nair is super inspiring, and what she's been able to do with Nykaa is just really really fantastic. My friend Swati, who runs Cash Karo, she's just a like bundle of energy, right? She's like the happiest person I know. So I don't know, man. I just think there's something so incredible about seeing a very successful female at work, who is no bullshit, all about the job. And just really committed to delivering delight to both customers and merchants. So yeah, those are just a few names off the top of my head.
That's great. And I'm glad you said this because, women, I sometimes hear entrepreneurs, especially women entrepreneurs, say that they just want to be known as entrepreneurs and not women entrepreneurs. So, what's your take? And do you think that there are such few um, successful examples of women entrepreneurs in India that we need more women to sort of create this tribe of women supporting each other?
So I mean that conversation could last like a whole hour, Sunanda. So I don't know how much time we have for that. But I think my like couple of quick observations on that is, see, at the end of the day, an average entrepreneur is coming from a position of some amount of privilege, right? So, and I think that's something that you can't deny, right? That you're English speaking, that you have the ability and the wherewithal to start a store online or to set up an Instagram shop or whatever, right? Like, I think there's always some amount of privilege that comes with starting with becoming an entrepreneur. And I think, at the end of the day, when I at least look at my own experience, you don't want to be sort of siloed into this little community of like you want to compete with the best, right? You don't want to compete only with women or only with men. And I think so my personal sort of take on it is, I do think it's extremely important to level the playing field for men, women, or folks of any gender to to be entrepreneurs first. And not overemphasize and over genderize entrepreneurship, because though it is absolutely fair that the challenges that a female in business faces are remarkably different from those that men in business face, I do think at the end of the day, any competent person wants to be treated with meritocracy and not basis what gender they align with, right? That said, I do think it's extremely important to change the narrative, and to talk about a lot of things when it comes to women, not just women in entrepreneurship, but just women at work, right? India has the worst participation by women in the labor force, and it's actually dwindling. And obviously, COVID exacerbated a lot of it. But I think the conversation really to have is, where are the working women, right? And how do we enable more women to succeed at work? And what is the infrastructure, the investment that it takes to actually ensure that we're leveling the playing field and making it easy for all folks, those who are interested, to participate. I think that really is, the conversation to be had. And, to the point that you made, I think that's why showing more types of entrepreneurs becomes important. There was a time when VCs only invested in tech businesses, but now VCs are investing in consumer products. They're investing in all kinds of, they're investing in hardware, they're investing in software. You see all kinds of businesses emerge, right? And I think that's really what is needed. I think a general diversification of what looks like a successful business, and who and what is the look of a successful business person, that needs to be significantly more diverse than it is right now.
I agree, and I hope that we're able to sort of level the playing field. Though it could probably be a very long journey. But to all the women in the audience, Suchita, I mean, and we know that Women's Day is on Monday. What would your message to them be? Whether they are entrepreneurs or thinking of becoming entrepreneurs, or just regular doing something on their own.
I think my biggest advice, which I actually got from my mom, who I really look up to, and she's a successful cardiologist, is, you need to stand up for yourself, right? You need to demand for what you think is important for you to be successful, because no one is going to, roll out a red carpet and say, chalo, up next Steve Jobs, oh, right? Like, that's not life, right? So if you don't put your hand up and say, hey, man, I need help, or or like demand the basics from your family, your partners, your spouse, your parents, your friends, right? At the end of the day, you're going to be the one who suffers. So I think to each their own. Everyone has their own priorities. Everyone has their own ambitions, and I'm no one to judge anyone based on their ambitions or their priorities. But I think irrespective of what your ambition is, my urgent like plea would be, please start asking, invest in yourself, and start asking people for help when you need it, because if you don't ask people for help, no one is going to come and save your ass.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. I think thank you so much for those insights, Sujita. And now you can probably like have some water while I'll just
Okay.
yeah, you can take a small break and we'll just get into the audience questions. The first question, actually, there are two similar questions from Aruna and Seema, and they are asking that, how to start your own small business when you don't have any knowledge and also maybe don't have that extensive a social circle. So basically, how do you start from scratch?
So, and I'll give you tactical feedback, right? First, figure out what you want to start a business in, right? And think through, do customers even want this product, right? So, for example, if you want to start an Ayurvedic beauty product, right? Really think through, okay, what is a customer using right now? What are the options in the market? And what can I bring to the table which is truly different? And then work backwards from there. I think there are a lot of very easy hacks that one can do. The biggest one being, take up, small booths at events. I've actually seen a lot of really interesting brands start out at these, small events, right? So many of which, LBB has sort of organized in the past. And that's where we really see a lot of small businesses start from, right? So Sleepy Owl, for example, started out by selling their coffee at LBB's Dessert Bazaar, right? Like they went from office to office, getting young corporate folks to taste their coffee. And that's really how they grew their brand, right? There are so many others who start by simple things like sending out samples, to customers through associations with, small marketplaces, large marketplaces, etc. But I think step number one is really think through is the product that I'm building, is it something that customers even want? And start with that. There are more than enough channels. You don't need to have an extensive social circle. If it makes you feel any better, I had zero social circle when it came to the industry that I'm in, right? I literally knew no one in tech. I knew no one in VC. I knew no one in any of this, right? But I've also built my network up from scratch. So I think the thing that I'll sort of reiterate is but the way I was able to build my network was because we had a strong product. So if you don't have a strong product, nothing really comes out of that. So first get your product right, think through your differentiation, and then start embedding yourself, get onto Facebook groups, get onto in fact on LBB's open house we had an episode with the Mama Earth co-founders, and they also mentioned how Ghazal, she actually literally started, sending out samples to these mom Facebook groups. And a bunch of the mothers really liked the samples, which is, how she was able to sort of build her community. And Mama Earth today is a multiple hundreds of crores worth a brand, right? So everyone starts small. Ghazal, in fact, was a artist, so she had nothing to do with, products at all. So every brand actually starts very, very small, but they hustle, they, keep trying, they get onto Facebook groups, they do offline events, they, try 60 different things till they finally figure out what product will actually take to, get customers drawn towards them.
Right. Okay, and I also take another question from Rajasvi, who's saying that how do we plan and budget resources for a small business in terms of workforce and funds, and what should be prioritized for growth, whether it's marketing or advertising, and what percentage of funds to allocate to these things?
So I think my take on it is, depending on, and I obviously have very little context in terms of, the business that this particular person's referring to. But I think my 2 cents would be, first just invest in getting your product right. Right. If you don't have your product in place, if you spend money on Facebook, Instagram, Etsy, LBB, Amazon, 600 platforms, you will get zero ROI because you haven't really got your product right in the first place, right? So figure out how many SKUs do I need to actually go to market, right? What is my customer proposition? If I haven't figured out my customer proposition, no problem, but let me keep testing my product out with customers till I actually get to something that my users want, right? So my 2 cents would be, do not waste money on anything apart from product development, getting your packaging right, talking to your customers, getting customer feedback, that's actually where, or building your own community, right? So start creating content, do a quick search on what are the top SEO terms on Google, see, how can you plug yourself into those, start, look at more organic ways of getting customer interest in your brand and in your product. That's how I would, and that's actually how LVB also started. We literally started as a Facebook page. And we take links of our website and we put it on Facebook, and that's how we got our first set of customers. Right, today obviously where we get customers from has changed significantly, but we literally were built off of the back of Facebook. So I think that's what I'll reiterate. But like, do not piss away $1 in marketing until you don't get your customer feedback, right? So the kind of marketing that you should do is marketing that helps you get customer feedback, not marketing to just acquire customers mindlessly. Again, happy to double tap on that directly with this particular user, but that would be my, early advice.
Okay, Rajashree, I hope you've made notes. I'll move on, and probably slightly related question is from Rashmi Singh, who wants to know, she needs guidance on how to build the trust amongst customers when you are, starting a totally new business.
So I think, and that goes back to the point that I made earlier, right? Which is like the trust actually needs to come from you, right? You are as much a brand as a seller as your product is, right? So if you run, ABC business, you are as much a brand as ABC is, right? So I think that's really, really important for you to keep in mind. In fact, even in LBB's earlier years, when we guys used to, say, for example, do offline events, you would always find me at the registration desk, right? Because that's actually how I learned a lot about my users, by talking to them, by asking them questions while they were signing up, right? That's how I also got a lot of knowledge and inputs, from our users. So I think the best way to build trust is, show results, right? Show that you as a founder really, really care about this product. And I think, the world can push away a lot, but they can never push away someone who truly, really cares. Right. And I think that goes a long way. So the easiest way to build trust is, customers need to trust you. They need to believe that you as a founder are truly committed to building, a phenomenal company, irrespective of the size of the company. And I think that's what matters the most.
Very well said. There's a question from Nohar, and this is a slightly long question. He's saying that apart from the marketplace, LBB is also in the job of content creation. So, with the pandemic and a lot of brands and individuals pivoting towards Insta lives, social content creation leading to a rather noisy social platform. So, have you at LBB re engineered the refresh in content, and what has your strategy been for remaining relevant online in the post COVID world?
Absolutely. So, if I understood the question correctly, I think this has to do with, does this have to do with our strategy on our social media, or like,
That's
is
for LBB, yes.
got it. So basically, actually, funnily enough, the best growth that we've seen was through COVID, as far as our social media is concerned, right? So the number of followers that we were able to acquire went through the roof. I think there were a lot of tactical things that we did. So one is we generally try staying away from things that 20 other people are jumping on, and we also try staying away from things that we are not experts at, right? So we tried a couple of Insta lives, and honestly, as a consumer of Instagram myself, 99% of Insta lives are super boring, right? And Instagram also is not the kind of platform, like, what is Instagram taught you to do? You're always tapping or you're scrolling, right? So if you think I'm going to look at my screen and do nothing but, watch this conversation, it's like it just doesn't work, right? Unless you're like Elon Musk, or some member of like Red Hot Chili Peppers, which none of us are. So I think the key is like really figure out, what are your strengths on social media. What we realized was that, we will lean on two strengths. One is strengths that surprise the customer, and the second is strengths that make the customer smile, right? So like just delight and surprise became our two sort of operating words. To surprise a customer, we did a lot of things like, for example, we launched our sampler kit. So, on LBB, you can sample really cool brands, which got a lot of customer traction. We obviously did a lot of really fun, giveaways and contests to, get our user community engaged. We launched a couple of really fun video series. So we launched this video series called Papa Ji Cooks, where we had, these like very sweet old uncles, whipping together a meal, and we sort of, tied it back to how you can shop easy to, make ingredients on LBB. But basically, I think the key really is, you need to have a strategy where you're very clear about, what is the emotion that you're creating for your customer, and then keep doing things that lean on either of the two emotions. So, for example, one thing that we've seen work very well on LBB is memes, right? And the thing is, like, on social media, it's kind of like when in Rome, you need to play by their rules. But again, play by social media rules basis, what your core strengths and proposition as your platform is as well. So that's how I'd address that question.
Yes, I'm sure, Nohar, your question is answered. And I think we are almost out of time, so I'll probably take the last two questions. One, which I really want to know as well, is it's from Ria, and she wants to know that how do you motivate yourself when you're your own boss?
Oh man, I'm actually a very like, I'm like an enthu cutlet, right? Like I'm like the most supercharged, like, just generally a very like, bouncy, like, let's go, let's go, let's go, kind of person. I think the things that keep me motivated, and it's a really good question because, it's very easy to get burnt out. It's very easy to, feel like kuch ho hi nahi raha hai, like I'm trying so hard, but nothing is happening, which is a lot of, how I felt in earlier years. But basically, I think the things that help me, tactically speaking, is just talking to my customers. In a month, I usually end up doing 30 to 40 direct customer calls where I'll have conversations with our users. And again, they don't know who I am. I'll come up with some random name, and I have a conversation with them. But it just brings you that joy, right? That through your platform, you help someone find something that was really cool, and by virtue of that find, a really awesome brand made money as well, right? So I think one is, talk to customers. I think the second, thing is go, for me, because I thoroughly enjoy learning and I'm generally a very curious person, find other things that will keep that curiosity alive in you, right? So for example, through COVID, a friend of mine and I kickstarted a book club. And basically in this book club, like, all of us are Twitter friends and we're all like alpha nerds. So all of us, like, read books and listen to 20 podcasts, and we'll come and we'll, exchange ideas. But again, it's so much fun because the thing that I actually love about my work, which is that I get to learn a lot. I found different channels to recreate that same experience of learning, through things like, having this really fun book club with awesome people, and doing other things that just keep my mind stimulated, but in a way that, releases the stress and the pressure as well. So talk to your customers when you feel lack of motivation, and, just go back to thinking about what's the thing that truly makes me happy, and find other things that you can do in a week or in a month, that bring that delight back to your everyday.
And actually, I've seen on your Instagram that you have like weekly recommendations also, like of books to read or podcasts to listen to.
It's so much fun. And it's so funny because, like, people who follow me on Instagram, they will send me like reminders on Sunday night saying, "Where is Somvar Gyan?" And I'm just like, "Ruk ja bhai, like, बहुत काम था इस हफ्ते." Sorry, I will be back next week. But no, but I think, but like I said earlier, right? Like, you need to be your own brand, right? Like, the customer needs to feel like, man, Suchita really cares about finding the best brands for me. And Suchita really cares about, being curious and learning more, which just helps build trust, and send trust back to LBB.
Right. And do you have any downtime at all, or are you like sort of always logged in, always working?
The thing is, like, I think that's the thing about being an entrepreneur, right? You need to love what you need to love the thrill of building, right? So for me, my downtime would be like reading a business book which I will specifically read because I want to get better at my job. But like, like I said, like, that what you're doing will make you better at, this like lifestyle, this career choice and this life choice that you've, taken for yourself. So for me, I don't over stress too much on, downtime, not downtime. I think what I will say is that it's extremely important to just let your brain relax. Because I think the problem is if you're always throwing stuff at yourself, right? You end up doing things with a very like with a very like myopic vision. And I think for founders, especially, it's very important to take out enough time in a week to, keep going back and thinking of what is my big picture and am I doing a good enough job of delivering on my big picture. So I think for me, downtime is more things that help me take like 6 steps back and just, remind myself that are we on the right path or am I doing too many things, because there is just a lot going on a day-to-day basis. So that's where I'd address that question.
Right. I really enjoyed this chat, and I wish I could have gone on for a little longer, but we ran out of time. I just wanted to thank you so much, Suchita, for the inspiration also and for the energy that you brought to this session. Listen to you, and I'll let Radhika wrap up.
Yeah, I think Sunanda, you're totally right about the energy. I just feel too pumped after listening to Suchita. And I feel that I'm sure the audience also really enjoyed having to hear your conversation. On that note, thank you so much, Suchita, for being part of this session and, of course, the opening of season 2 of Small Talk with the Etsy Collective. A huge thank you to the audience as well for being part of the session. I hope you really enjoyed and watching the session and also gain a lot of insight about starting a small business. Don't forget to know more about our upcoming sessions on our social media handles. And next week we have another session about beginner's guide of opening an Etsy shop, which will be taken up by our own in-house Etsy team. So make sure you come for that session as well. Do check out our Instagram handles and social media handles for more updates. And once again, everyone, thank you so much for being part of this session. We really enjoyed having you over and have a great weekend ahead.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.